Overturning and Overthrowing: Subversion in Children's Literature by Jordana Pachter. Text and Tools for Children and Youth, Ignite presentation. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines subvert as to overturn or overthrow from the foundation, or as to pervert or corrupt by an undermining of morals, allegiance, or faith. Pretty heavy accusations to level at a children's book. But subversion is not always a negative thing. Some of the most successful and beloved children's classics are books that subvert. Picture books like Where the Wild Things Are, series like Harry Potter or The Hunger Games, even Grimm's fairy tales are all subversive. What does this mean exactly, to be subversive? In literature, the term can encompass almost any book that subverts established norms, expectations, or conventions. Sometimes this can mean encouraging behaviors society disapproves of, like rule breaking. Other times, it can mean addressing adult topics like divorce or politics. In fact, the earliest subversive books were actually crossovers between adult literature and children's literature. Books like Grimm's fairy tales or Gulliver's Travels, which were written as political satires but were read and enjoyed by children. Today, it is rare to see either book outside of the children's section. In the 19th century, children's literature exploded. In fact, the second half of this period is often known as the golden age of children's literature. According to Kimberly Reynolds, during this time, children's literature gradually gave way to more complex constructions of children. And alongside this increased complexity came increased subversion. For example, Little Women, often considered a bastion of domestic conservative values, was actually incredibly subversive for its time, promoting women's rights, criticizing gender norms, and challenging the dominant society. In the 1900s, childhood became increasingly romanticized. Much of the literature produced for children in the first half of the century reflected an adult's nostalgia for a happier, simpler age, relying heavily on nature imagery to convey the purity of childhood. But even as children's texts celebrated this ideal, many of them subverted it. Peter Pan, considered to be the epitome of this era, offers readers a very problematic protagonist, one who is as vicious as he is uncorrupted. Even Neverland is incredibly violent, more Lord of the Flies than Utopia. J.M. Barrie subverts current assumptions about childhood in a way that questions cultural values and norms. By the second half of the 20th century, subversion had found a new venue: teen literature. Books like Catcher in the Rye and The Outsiders were overtly subversive, thumbing their noses at the dominant culture. Other books for and about children started to deal with traditionally adult topics, such as sex, racism, and trauma. Judy Blume's controversial Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret had its preteen narrator address questions of religion and puberty. Don't Hurt Laurie talked about child abuse. And more subtle subversion continued. In 1945, E.B. White published Stuart Little, an indictment of the juvenilization of American culture. In 1958, Dr. Seuss's Yertle the Turtle presented an allegorical critique of fascism. In fact, the beloved children's author specialized in subversion. He described his most famous picture book, The Cat in the Hat, as a revolt against authority. Gulliver's Travels was a major influence on his writing. During an interview, he once called himself subversive as hell. Today, subversion is an integral part of many popular series for children. Consider one of my favorites, Harry Potter. As both critics and fans have pointed out, the series borrows heavily from J.R.R. Tolkien, Roald Dahl, Monty Python, and many others. But what makes Harry Potter subversive is that it regularly breaks fantasy conventions. For example, though both Harry Potter and Frodo seek to destroy a corrupting power, Harry shares his burden with his friends, allowing them to carry the Horcrux at times. As author Wayne Gladstone writes, the Harry Potter universe is filled with rules that are constantly broken in the interest of equity. Time and time again, Harry and all the likable characters of Hogwarts break the letter of the law to fulfill the spirit of the law. So what? Why is subversion such a popular and reoccurring theme in children's literature, and why do we care? Because books matter. They have the power to influence and inform how we view ourselves and the world around us. By offering children an alternative to the traditional, the conventional, and the mainstream, subversive literature offers the possibility of change. Little Women taught readers that women can have lives and aspirations outside of the domestic sphere. Peter Pan suggested a different evaluation of nature and innocence. Stuart Little unleashed a storm of controversy about what was appropriate in children's literature. Judy Blume's books openly addressed subjects that were once considered taboo. And Harry Potter taught us that not all rules should be followed. Subversion is negative only if one assumes that nothing need be overturned or overthrown. But this is rarely the case. Within the safe space of children's literature, readers can become revolutionaries, and in doing so, books can continue to change the world.